Our State Superintendent of Education.
Well, thank you for, is it working? Can you hear me? All right, thank you for having me here today. I really admire what you do as teachers. I'm going to talk a little bit about teachers and some other things today. But congratulations on the recognitions that you've received. And obviously, all of you who are in this room have had a profound impact on the lives of young children. At the end of the day, that's the best we can hope for. So when we look in the mirror and know that our lives made a difference. I want to talk about goals, my goals as superintendent, a little bit about the vision, and then I'm going to talk about, give you some background, some facts and some views that shaped my policy and attitudes towards public education. I'll talk about the needs for options in school environments, the need for options in curricula, and then I'm going to talk about the importance of principals and teachers. The goal for our education system and public education system in South Carolina is that every student acquire the knowledge, the skills, and attitudes. We focus a lot on the knowledge, but not so much on the skills and attitudes, so that every child can be successful in a career or college, and I see those as being different, so that they have the ability to be productive members of society. And there's a relationship between education and being a productive member of society, and a productive member of society means jobs. Now, how do we do this? We want to develop a system that puts students and parents first by providing every student and parent the opportunity to choose a school with the environment and the curriculum that best fits the individual abilities, needs, and aspirations of the student. And I'll talk about all of these in turn. And we want to provide these schools where every school is led by an excellent principal with excellent teachers. Now, one thing I know, based on experience of working with a lot of poor kids, I was an infantry soldier for 31 years. And most of the kids in the infantry were not on your college track. Many of them didn't finish high school. And not a small number were in the infantry because that was the better of the two choices given to them by a judge. But I know that no student should be forced to attend a failing school. And low-income families deserve the right to make the best choices for their children, just as high-income families always have. And the debate in education should not be about traditional schools versus some other form of schools. It needs to be about high-performing schools versus low-performing schools. I'm convinced that poor kids can learn. I know that. I've seen how we've taken a lot of poor kids who end up in the infantry and turned them into patriotic, hardworking, productive citizens. And in far too many cases, these were kids who were not on the success track, but they have the ability to learn. We know that a child who does poorly with one teacher may do very well with another teacher, based on a relationship and other things. We know that students in Harlem's Success Academy, that's a public charter school where admission is based on a lottery, perform equally as well as students in New York's talented and gifted schools where they're chosen based on admissions tests. And we know that countries with significantly higher rates of poverty, China and India, for example, outperform the United States students in very many areas. Poor kids can learn. Now, traditional proposals for improving education: more money, better facilities, improved curricula, and smaller classes are not going to produce the kinds of changes that we're interested in. Controlling for inflation per student spending has more than doubled since 1970. Yet, for the first time in history, we are facing the prospect of a generation less literate than their parents. Now, there's two perspectives on funding education. The first perspective is, well, if it's good for the kids, then the taxpayers ought to fund it. Now, the problem with that perspective is parents don't get to decide what's good. The requirement for funding is unlimited, and at the end of the day, the taxpayers are on the hook for ever-increasing tax burdens. An alternative perspective to school funding is, and this is the one that I bring, given the dollars available, how do we maximize student learning? Now, the advantages of that perspective is that it focuses on outputs, student learning, not inputs, spending, curricula, facilities. Secondly, this perspective invites opportunities for innovation. And thirdly, it limits the taxpayer liability. Now, I believe that education is not like manufacturing. And I've heard people say, well, it's not like manufacturing where all the widgets are the same, yet students are all different. And I understand that. But education is a service delivery challenge like law or medicine. And the three imperatives in law and medicine that drive quality service are accountability, incentives, and competition. And those three imperatives have the ability to transform education. We know that in every field, from education to medicine to law to DMV, or you pick your agency, in every field, poorly structured, non-accountable service delivery systems cost a fortune and don't work very well. Now, let me explain why the dollars should follow the child. In any area of human activity, we know that funding consumers, in this case parents and students, produces better and more efficient products than funding producers, that is, schools and districts. That's why our life scholarships and our teaching fellow scholarships work so well, as those fund students, not institutions. One thing I've learned as a parent, as a teacher, and as somebody who's spent 41 years now working with young people, is that while every child is special, every child is different. They differ in ability, in motivation, the rates at which they mature, their interests, their skill sets, their personalities, and their home environment. Enormous differences in children. Yet we have a traditional model of education that puts every child in the same classroom and expects them to learn the same material on the same schedule. We have a system that's focused on seat time rather than mastery and individual learning. A system that focuses on a teacher in front of the classroom rather than on providing individualized, personalized services. And I'm going to come back to that. Now, while the traditional model actually works for most kids, for far too many, it produces frustration and failure. It focuses on inputs, what's taught, how it's taught, how many hours it's taught, rather than what the student knows and what the student can do. And we also know that there's significant improvements in technology have the ability to allow us to provide personalized instruction that focuses on the needs of the individual student, their learning style, and the pace at which they most effectively learn. Now, I'm sure you understand better than I do that reading is the key to learning. That in grades 1 through 3, students learn to read, and in grades 4 through 12, they read to learn. Sadly, a study by the National Assessment for Educational Progress, NAEP, found that 33% of fourth graders in America are functionally illiterate. That's 1/3 of our students. Now, is it any surprise that they reach 8th grade or 9th grade, they can't read their social studies assignment, understand their math text, or their science book. They become frustrated. School becomes a place of humiliation, and at the first opportunity, they bail. If we want to work on the dropout rate, and there's a lot of reasons why kids drop out, but the number one is reading. Kids have got to be able to leave 3rd grade learning or reading on grade level. Now, we also know that children from language-rich homes who've been exposed to standard English with correct grammar, precise pronunciation, and extensive vocabularies, who've been read to, will learn to read a lot easier than children who've not experienced those benefits. Yet again, we put them all in the same classroom and expect the teacher to be all things to all students. I went to a school, a public charter school in Greenville. That's all low income, high risk, most families where the parents cannot read. Those students are doing reading 3 hours a day, 1 hour based on their grade, 2 hours based on their reading level. But they are all reading on schedule, and they are all on track to do well when they move out into high school. That's one example of the many types of schools that I think we need to provide so that children and parents can pick the educational environment that best fits the needs and aspirations of their children. And the kinds of schools that I'm talking about are traditional schools, public charter schools, virtual online or cyber programs, single gender programs, year-round schools. My kids went to a year-round school in California. It worked great. You know, in the summertime, the children get sick of their parents. Parents are tired of having the kids around. But year-round school, they go to school for 10 weeks, 3 weeks off. 10 weeks, 3 weeks off. You don't have the enormous forgetting that occurs over the summer period. You're able to take family vacations in the spring and the fall, not just the summer and at Christmas time. It was a great system. We need to offer Montessori programs that work for some kids. That open environment and the unstructured nature of the Montessori classroom works for some children. Other children need a lot more structure, a lot more firm boundaries. But the point is that what works for one child doesn't work for others. Some kids do best at homeschooling. Some in public magnet school or our alternative schools for children who are discipline problems. And we've got one like that in Newberry County where I live, and it works great for those kids. Career and technology centers and career academies work really well. I'm going to visit one here in Horry County right after I leave here. And for some kids, private schools are the right fit. Not only do we need to work to provide more options, and I know that in some rural counties and rural districts we can't have 8 different kinds of schools, but we shouldn't have zip code control your destiny for poor kids, and we need to provide options for those children too. But in addition to options in educational environment, I think we also need to provide options in curriculum. And that really starts at the high school level. I think through high school, everybody needs the same base, but that's where you really start branching out. And I think that we ought to offer for a college prep curricula for those students who aspire to go to a 4-year institution. For those who want advanced job skills and a technical related background, we should offer a career and technical curriculum. And we should offer a basic curriculum for those who want to go into the workforce, an apprenticeship program, or the military. Now, what I'm not arguing for is the European system where you take a test at the end of the 8th grade and your map is laid out for you. I'm talking about choices for students and parents, where they make the decision as to what is the best fit for the child. One thing I've never understood is who decided that every child has to take Algebra 2. That makes sense if you're on the college track. I can tell you, I've never used Algebra 2.